A Day in the Life of an Ancient Roman Part 1. Before sunrise in the Eternal City, good evening. And tonight, we are going to do something very simple. We are going to slow down far away from the noise of the modern world. From glowing screens, busy roads, and the endless small worries of the day. We are going to travel back in time. Not to a battlefield. Not to the halls of emperors. Not to the dramatic rise and fall of famous men. Instead, tonight, we will slip quietly into the ordinary life of ancient Rome, not the Rome of marble statues and grand speeches. At least not at first. But the Rome of sleepy streets before dawn. The Rome of bakers lighting ovens in the dark. The Rome of shopkeepers, laborers, servants, mothers, children, scribes, merchants, and soldiers. All waking, step by step, into another day beneath the wide Roman sky. This is not the story of one emperor or one great war. It is the story of a day. A single day, lived in a city that, at its height, ruled a vast empire stretching across continents. A city of crowded apartments and elegant villas. Of bathhouses and temples. Of fountains, smoke, donkeys, market stalls, gossip, bread, dust, and sunlight. And tonight, you are going to walk through that day. Slowly. So if you are comfortable, settle in. Let your breathing soften. Let your thoughts drift a little further away with each sentence. There's nowhere you need to be. Nothing you need to do. Only listen. And wander. Now imagine that the world around you has gone dark. The year is somewhere in the 2nd century after Christ. During the long, powerful stretch of the Roman Empire. Rome is rich, crowded, noisy, and magnificent. It is the largest city most people in the world could imagine. More than 1 million people may live here, packed into hills and valleys, alleys and courtyards, under tiled roofs and hanging laundry and drifting smoke. But for now, most of them are still asleep. The sky over Rome is deep blue-black, not yet touched by sunrise. The stars are fading, but only a little. A faint chill lingers in the air before the heat of the day begins to rise from the stone streets. That you are standing in a narrow street between tall apartment buildings known as insulae. These are not elegant homes for the wealthy. They are practical, crowded buildings where many ordinary Romans live. Several stories high, often built quickly, and not always well. They lean over the street with wooden balconies, shutters, and ropes for hanging clothes. At this hour, the street is quiet in the way only a city can be quiet, never truly silent, only softer. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once. Water drips steadily from a public fountain into a stone basin. A cartwheel rattles faintly far away, perhaps a delivery arriving before the daytime traffic restrictions begin. If you look up, you can see only a thin slice of sky between the buildings. A lamp flickers in one window, then disappears. Inside these apartment buildings, Romans sleep in rooms that vary greatly depending on wealth. A poor family may crowd into a small upper-floor room with little furniture and no private kitchen. A more comfortable household may rent larger rooms lower down, where the risk of climbing endless stairs and the danger of fire are both slightly less severe. The lower floors are more desirable. The upper floors are cheaper, hotter in summer, colder in winter, and much more inconvenient. Imagine carrying water, food, or firewood up several flights of narrow stairs every day. Imagine living under a roof that leaks, with smoke from nearby cooking fires finding its way through cracks and shutters. Ancient Rome is glorious from a distance. Up close, for many people, it is cramped and exhausting. In one small room above you, a family is beginning to stir. The father works as a leather worker. The mother manages the household as best she can with limited space and limited money. 2 children sleep under blankets stuffed with wool. And in the corner, there is a simple chest for clothing, a few clay lamps, some bowls, and a small shrine shelf holding household gods, tiny protectors of the home. Watching over the family in silence, the father wakes first. He lies still for a moment, staring into the dimness. The room smells faintly of oil, old smoke, wool blankets, and yesterday's bread. Outside, the city is not yet fully awake, but he knows he should rise before the streets fill and the day's work begins. There's no alarm clock, of course. No buzzing phone. No electric light. Only habit. And the rhythm of a city that expects labor. He sits up slowly, rubbing sleep from his eyes. The floor is cool under his feet. Somewhere nearby, another door opens. Someone coughs in the hallway. From below, he catches the smell of the first oven fire being lit in a bakery. That smell, warm grain and smoke, is one of the first signs that Rome is waking. Bread is one of the great foundations of Roman life. For rich and poor alike, grain matters. Wheat matters. Bread matters. The Roman state understands this very well. Feeding the city is not just a practical concern. It is a political one. A hungry Rome is an angry Rome, so grain arrives from across the empire, from Sicily, North Africa. Egypt shipped overseas and hauled into storehouses to keep the city alive. Before sunrise, bakers are already at work. If we walk quietly down the street and turn a corner, we can find one of them. The bakery is warm, much warmer than the street outside. A glow spills through the doorway. Inside, men move through shadows and orange light. Flour dust hangs in the air. A slave or hired worker pours grain into a mill. Another kneads dough with practiced strength. Someone checks the oven, where firelight flickers against blackened walls. Some bakeries in Rome use large millstones turned by donkeys or by enslaved workers. The stones grind grain into flour, and the work is repetitive, dusty, and exhausting. In a wealthy city that loves grand monuments, much of daily life still depends on grinding, hauling, lifting, scrubbing, and carrying. The baker himself is already coated with a pale dusting of flour, making him look almost ghostly in the firelight. He moves quickly, because the city will want bread soon, fresh loaves for homes, stalls, inns, and street sellers. He shapes the dough and places it into the oven with calm efficiency. He has done this so many times that the work lives in his body. The timing, the heat, the weight of each loaf, he knows it all without needing to think very much. Outside, the darkness begins to soften. A faint silver line appears behind distant rooftops. Back in the apartment buildings, more people are waking. A woman wraps a shawl around herself and goes down to fetch water from the public fountain. She carries a clay jug and walks carefully over the uneven stones, trying not to slip. At the fountain, she is not alone. Even this early, others are there already, waiting their turn, murmuring softly, filling jars for cooking, washing, and drinking. Not every Roman home has running water, especially not in the crowded apartment blocks. Rome is famous for its aqueducts, and rightly so. These great structures bring water from distant sources into the city, feeding fountains, baths, and some private homes. But access is uneven. Wealthy households may enjoy more convenient water supplies. Ordinary people often rely on public fountains. So before breakfast, before work, before the city fully opens its eyes, there is already a small queue at the fountain. The water splashes into clay jars. Someone yawns. Someone adjusts a sleeping child on one hip. Someone complains quietly about a neighbor upstairs who kept dropping things late into the night. This, too, is Rome. Not just emperors and senators, but tired people collecting water before dawn. As the eastern sky grows paler, the city slowly takes shape. Rooflines emerge from darkness. Temple columns catch the first weak light. Smoke begins rising from rooftops and courtyards. Somewhere, a rooster crows, perhaps from a courtyard where chickens scratch in the dirt behind a workshop. In a larger home across town, a very different Roman morning is beginning. This house belongs to a wealthy family, perhaps a merchant of high status or a minor senator with respectable connections. The home is not an apartment in an insula, but a domus, a private urban house arranged around interior spaces, carefully designed to display comfort, order, and social position. The front door opens onto an entrance passage. Beyond it lies the atrium, the central hall of the house. In the dim early light, it is a beautiful space, quiet, cool, and still. Above, an opening in the roof allows light and rainwater to enter. Below, a shallow pool called the impluvium collects the rain. The walls may be painted in rich colors, deep red, black, yellow, perhaps decorated with delicate scenes of gods, gardens, or architecture. The household slaves are already awake. One sweeps the floor. Another trims a lamp. In the kitchen, someone begins preparing a simple morning meal. Another slave checks the clothing that the master may wear later if he expects visitors. In Roman elite households, mornings can involve business, social obligations, and a careful display of respectability. The master of the house wakes not to the sound of carts or bakery fires, but to the soft movement of servants beyond his chamber. He does not need to fetch water himself. He does not climb 6 flights of stairs. He does not worry, at least not in the same way, about whether there will be enough bread tomorrow. Yet his life, too, is governed by ritual. Soon he will dress in a tunic, perhaps with the help of a servant. If he is entitled to wear a toga for formal occasions, that heavy garment may come later. Roman clothing is simple in shape but meaningful in status. Tunics are common for both men and women. The women often wear a longer garment called a stola over their tunic. Fabrics, dyes, decoration, and cleanliness all signal wealth and social position. But for now, the wealthy house is quiet. The children sleep a little longer. The courtyard air is cool. Somewhere in a side room, a slave carefully opens shutters to let in the first true light of morning. The sun has not yet cleared the rooftops, but dawn is now unmistakable. And with dawn, the sounds begin. First one cart, then another, a donkey brays. Sandaled footsteps slap against stone. A vendor calls to someone from across the street. A door bangs open. A dog begins barking at nothing anyone else can see. The city that seemed hushed only moments ago is now gathering itself, stretching, waking, remembering all its obligations. Rome is not a quiet place for long. If we keep walking, we can make our way toward one of the main streets. Here the signs of daily life multiply quickly. A man carrying baskets of vegetables hurries past. A fish seller, not yet surrounded by customers, arranges his goods with a look of weary concentration. A group of laborers moves together, speaking in low voices. A schoolboy with a wax tablet tucked under his arm trails behind an older servant. The street smells of many things at once: fresh bread, wood smoke, damp stone, olive oil, sweat, animal dung, herbs, fish, wet wool, sometimes perfume, if a wealthy passerby has used it generously. Sometimes the sour smell of refuse waiting to be cleared away. Ancient cities do not smell like museums. They smell alive. As sunlight reaches further into the streets, shop fronts open one by one. Many Roman businesses operate on the ground floor of buildings, with workshops or sales counters facing directly onto the street. Above them, people live in rooms or apartments. A passerby can buy bread, wine, oil, cooked food, lamps, sandals, cloth, tools, or household items without ever leaving the neighborhood. A metalworker lifts his shutter. A cobbler sets out shoes and leather scraps. A seller of hot food begins arranging pots of lentils, vegetables, and stew for customers who may not have proper kitchens at home. This is one of the practical truths of Roman urban life. Many ordinary apartments do not have safe, spacious cooking areas. Fire is a constant danger in a crowded city built with wood, cloth, oil lamps, and tightly packed housing. So for many Romans, especially the poor, buying prepared food from street vendors and small cookshops is common. Breakfast is usually simple for many people. It may be bread dipped in wine, or bread with olives, cheese, dates, or leftover food from the day before. Wealthy Romans can enjoy more variety, but even then breakfast is often not the grandest meal of the day. Roman eating habits vary by class, by period, and by personal taste. But morning meals are usually practical rather than luxurious. Imagine a boy of about 10 years, old, standing outside a food stall with a small coin in his hand. He waits while the vendor hands him a piece of bread and a bit of cheese wrapped in cloth. He will take it back to his mother, who is already mending a tunic by the window, while trying to keep his younger sister from knocking over the lamp. A few streets away, a soldier on leave tears bread with his hands and eats while leaning against a wall, watching the city move around him. He still wears his short military cloak, and his boots are dusty from travel. Rome is full of people passing through: soldiers, merchants, messengers, sailors, pilgrims, officials, entertainers, and those who have come simply because all roads, in one way or another, lead here. As the morning brightens, the city's social divisions become more visible. A wealthy man carried in a litter by slaves passes a laborer whose tunic is patched at both shoulders. A senator's polished sandals step over muddy water, while a child barefoot in the street watches him pass. Fine jewelry flashes in the sunlight near a woman whose hands are red and rough from scrubbing laundry. Rome is a city of spectacle, but also a city of inequality. Its great monuments are built by human effort, and much of that effort is cheap, coerced, or enslaved. Its wealth flows from trade, conquest, taxation, land, and labor. To understand Rome fully, one must hold two images at once: the glorious empire of marble and engineering, and the crowded city of ordinary people trying to get through another day. And that day is now well underway. Soon, officials will begin their duties. Teachers will gather pupils. Craftsmen will settle into work. Merchants will haggle. Lawyers will prepare speeches. Temple attendants will tend shrines. Housewives will manage food, fabric, servants, and children. Slaves will carry messages, clean floors, grind grain, pour wine, and endure the 1,000 unseen tasks that keep households functioning. But before the busiest part of the morning begins, let us pause. Take one more slow walk through these streets. Notice how the sunlight falls unevenly between the buildings, turning the dust golden. Notice the chalk marks on walls, the shop signs, the little shrines tucked into corners, the cats slipping between baskets, the water splashing in troughs for animals. Notice the voices beginning to overlap until they become a kind of urban music. Arguments, greetings, bargaining, laughter, footsteps, hooves, wheels, and somewhere above it all, a woman leaning from a window to call to a neighbor across the street. This is ancient Rome waking up. Not as a chapter in a textbook, not as a ruined forum beneath a modern sky, but as a living city of millions of ordinary moments. And we have only just begun. In the next part of our journey, the sun will climb higher over the rooftops, and we will follow the Romans into the full rhythm of the morning, into the markets and workshops, into schools and bathhouses, into kitchens and temples, and into the complicated, fascinating routines of a city that believed itself to be the center of the world. For now, though, stay here a little longer in the cool, early light. Listen to the carts. Listen to the fountain. Listen to the baker's oven crackling somewhere down the street. And let ancient Rome drift gently around you as the day begins. A Day in the Life of an Ancient Roman Part 2. Morning in the markets, homes, and streets of Rome. The sun has now risen above the rooftops of Rome. Its light spills slowly into the narrow streets, touching stone walls, worn doorways, and the tops of crowded apartment buildings. The coolness of dawn has begun to fade, replaced by the first hint of the warmth that will settle over the city by midday. Smoke from cooking fires drifts upward in thin, pale ribbons. and the long shadows of morning stretch across the cobbles like dark cloth. Rome is fully awake now, the quiet, sleepy city we wandered through before sunrise has transformed into something busier, louder, and more alive. Doors stand open. Shutters are pushed back. Merchants sweep the fronts of their shops. Children hurry beside parents or servants. Donkeys pull carts loaded with jars, baskets, and sacks of grain. Voices echo from one building to another, sometimes sharp with argument, sometimes warm with greeting, and sometimes carrying the plain, familiar boredom of ordinary conversation. If we continue walking through the streets, we can feel the city gathering momentum with every step ahead of us. The road widens slightly, and the smell of fresh bread grows stronger again. The bakery we visited earlier has been transformed by daylight. Where there had been only firelight and flour dust before, there is now business. Loaves sit in neat rows near the entrance. A boy calls out prices to passers-by. A woman counts coins in her palm before choosing 2 round loaves, still warm from the oven. Another customer asks for something coarser and cheaper, perhaps bread made from a less refined flour, suitable for a household that must stretch every coin carefully. Bread in Rome is not merely food. It is routine, necessity, and comfort. For the poor, it may be the center of most meals. For the wealthy, it is still always present, though accompanied by many other things. The smell of warm bread in the morning is one of the great constants of urban life, a small luxury shared by rich and poor alike. Beside the bakery, a small food stall has already drawn its first cluster of customers. Clay pots sit over gentle heat. One contains lentils, another a stew of vegetables and herbs, and another perhaps a thick porridge made from grain. A laborer standing nearby tears bread into pieces and dips it into the hot food, eating quickly before he begins the day's work. A young woman buys a portion to take back to an elderly relative at home. A man with a sleepy child balanced on his hip waits for a cup of watered wine and a handful of olives. Roman breakfasts are usually modest. Bread, olives, cheese, fruit, leftover vegetables, perhaps a little wine mixed with water. These are the kinds of things that begin the day. There is no single breakfast shared by everyone in Rome. Like almost everything else in the city, meals depend on class, money, region, and habit. Yet most mornings begin simply, because there is work to do and little time for ceremony, and there is always work. In a nearby workshop, a cobbler sits on a low stool in the doorway, already bent over a sandal in need of repair. Leather scraps lie in a small heap beside him. He works with practiced fingers, tightening straps, checking the sole, trimming edges with a small knife. His shop is narrow, barely more than a room open to the street, but it is enough. People pass, pause, glance at the goods hanging on pegs, and move on. Next door, a fuller has begun the long, unpleasant labor of cleaning cloth. Roman clothing, especially wool garments, requires constant care. Fullers wash, whiten, and finish fabric using methods that are not especially glamorous. Some use water, clay, and stale urine, collected in public containers and valued for its ammonia. It is not a pleasant business. The smell alone is enough to make most modern visitors step quickly away. Yet it is necessary work, because Rome is a city where appearance matters. Clean tunics, bright cloth, and properly cared for garments signal order, respectability, and status. A little farther on, a blacksmith's hammer rings against metal, sharp and rhythmic. A donkey shifts its weight beside a cart. A pair of women carrying baskets pause to speak with a fruit seller. A boy runs past with a wax tablet tucked under his arm, nearly colliding with an older man who mutters something rude under his breath. This is how Rome feels in the morning, crowded, practical, restless, and full of overlapping lives. If we turn into a side street, we find ourselves in a quieter residential area where ordinary households are deep into their daily routines. Through an open doorway, we can see the inside of a modest Roman home. It is not luxurious, but it is orderly. Light falls into a small central space, illuminating a simple wooden table, a few stools, and a chest pushed against the wall. A shelf shrine, the lararium, holds small household gods, protective spirits of the home and family. A lamp flickers before them, and beneath it someone has placed a few tiny offerings. The woman of the house is already at work. She kneels near a basket of laundry, sorting garments that need washing or mending. Beside her, a younger girl spins wool with slow, practiced movements, learning the kind of skill expected of Roman women from a very early age. In another corner, a pot simmers gently over a small brazier. The smell is plain but comforting: grain, herbs. Perhaps onion. Roman households are busy places, and much of that busyness falls upon women, enslaved servants, and anyone else responsible for the invisible labor of keeping daily life together. Water must be fetched. Food must be prepared. Clothing must be washed, repaired, folded, and stored. Children must be fed and watched. Lamps must be trimmed. Floors swept. Grain ground. Small accounts remembered. Social obligations navigated. If a family has servants or enslaved workers, those people take on many of these tasks. If not, the household members do them themselves. A Roman woman's life varies enormously depending on class. A wealthy matron may oversee servants, manage household finances, and supervise the upbringing of children in a large, elegant house. A poor woman may spend much of her day in physically demanding labor, baking, weaving, carrying water, cleaning, selling goods, or helping with a family trade. But in almost every case, the home is a center of responsibility. Let us stay here a moment longer. The little girl spinning wool glances toward the doorway, distracted by the sound of the street outside. Her mother gently reminds her to keep working. A baby, half asleep, stirs in a basket near the wall. Somewhere upstairs, footsteps creak overhead. The room is warm now, and sunlight is beginning to reach the far side of the floor. There is something familiar in scenes like this, even across 2,000 years. A parent occupied with chores. A child growing bored. A pot simmering quietly. Morning light in a modest room. History often seems distant when it is told through emperors and battles. But ordinary domestic life can feel surprisingly close. Back out in the street, we continue toward one of the city's market areas. Rome has many markets, from small neighborhood stalls to larger and more specialized spaces. Some are permanent, others more temporary. Some focus on fresh produce, others on meat, fish, pottery, cloth, tools, or imported luxuries. The closer we get, the louder it becomes. Voices overlap in a constant, shifting hum. Sellers call out the quality of their figs, the freshness of their fish, the fairness of their prices. Buyers haggle. Children weave between adults. A mule stamps its hoof impatiently, while a driver tries to maneuver through the crowd. Somewhere nearby, a cage of chickens erupts into noise. The market is one of the best places to understand the Roman Empire, because the empire is present here in tangible, edible, touchable form. On one stall you might see olives from Spain, or at least from Roman Hispania. On another, spices that have traveled extraordinary distances through trade networks reaching eastward. There are amphorae of wine and olive oil, perhaps from Italy, perhaps from North Africa, perhaps from the Greek East. There are fish sauces, grains, lentils, fruits, nuts, cheeses, and jars of preserved goods. Rome is not self-contained. It is fed, clothed, and enriched by an enormous web of roads, ships, farms, workshops, ports, taxes, and trade routes stretching across the Mediterranean world and beyond. The market makes that vast system feel intimate. Empire becomes a basket of figs, a jar of oil, a bolt of dyed cloth, a handful of pepper. We stop near a vegetable stall where a merchant arranges onions, leeks, beans, and bundles of herbs. His hands move quickly. He knows that appearance matters. Produce stacked neatly looks fresher, even if some of it has already begun to wilt in the heat. A customer examines a bunch of greens suspiciously, then asks the price in a tone that suggests she is prepared to complain no matter what he says. A little farther along, fish lie on a slab, their scales catching the light. The smell is strong, even for those accustomed to city life. Nearby hangs cured meat. Somewhere else, a seller pours wine from a large jar into smaller containers for customers to take home. Potters display bowls, cups, and lamps. A cloth merchant shakes out a bright length of dyed fabric, letting it catch the eye of anyone passing. If you were a Romang of modest means, a trip to market would not be leisurely. It would be practical. You would think about what your household needs most urgently, what you can afford, and how long the food must last. Bread, oil, perhaps some vegetables, maybe cheese, maybe dried fruit if there is money left. Meat is not an everyday luxury for everyone. Fresh fish spoils quickly. Imported spices are a dream for most people. The market is full of wonders, but ordinary life is built on calculation. Not far away, in a richer part of the city, a different sort of shopping is underway. A wealthy household has sent a slave or steward to purchase ingredients for the day's main meal. He carries a list in memory, or perhaps scratched onto a tablet. He may be looking for good olive oil, fish, herbs, eggs, honey, wine, and fruit. If his master entertains guests, the demands will be higher. Roman elite dining can be elaborate, even theatrical. And a cook in a rich house may prepare courses involving game birds, shellfish, sweet pastries, sauces thick with herbs, and carefully arranged platters meant to impress as much as to nourish. But that grand meal comes later. Morning is for preparation. As the city grows warmer, children begin to make their way to school. Not every Roman child goes. Education depends heavily on class, gender, money, and family priorities. Wealthy boys are the most likely to receive a substantial education. Some girls do as well, especially in prosperous households, but opportunities are uneven. Poor children may learn little formally because their labor is needed at home or in family trades. Still, schools exist, and in the morning streets of Rome, you can imagine small groups of children moving toward them. A Roman school is not usually a large separate building like a modern school. It may be a rented room, a covered colonnade, or a space open to the street. The teacher, often not especially wealthy himself, sits with his pupils and leads them through reading, writing, memorization, and arithmetic. The atmosphere is not always gentle. Let us peek into one such lesson. The room is plain. A few boys sit on benches, wax tablets balanced on their knees. One scratches letters carefully with a stylus, then smooths them away to begin again. Another recites lines of text from memory, stumbling over a word and earning a sharp correction. In the corner, a younger child practices the alphabet aloud, his voice rising and falling in tired repetition. Roman education places great emphasis on memory, discipline, and imitation. Children learn letters, then words, then passages. They copy, repeat, and recite. Some go on to study rhetoric, the art of persuasive speaking, which is deeply valued in Roman public life. A boy from an ambitious family may one day need to speak in court, negotiate politics, or present himself as a man of cultivation. For him, school is not simply about literacy. It is preparation for status. But not every child in Rome spends the morning with a stylus in hand. Many are already working. A girl helps her mother at a stall. A boy runs errands for a workshop. Another child watches younger siblings while adults labor nearby. Childhood in the ancient world is often brief by modern standards. Not because children are unloved, but because life is practical. And every pair of hands can be useful. As we leave the school behind, we begin walking toward the heart of public life in Rome. The Forum is not a single simple space. It is a center of politics, business, law, religion, and social display. By mid-morning, it is alive with movement. Men in tunics and togas cross the open space, some hurrying, some deliberately strolling as though to suggest that nothing in the world could possibly rush them. Petitioners wait to speak with patrons. Messengers weave through the crowd. Clients gather around wealthy or influential men, hoping for favors, introductions, or practical help. Lawyers prepare for disputes. Clerks carry tablets. Officials appear busy, whether or not they truly are. Here, Rome likes to see itself. Temples rise nearby. Statues look down from pedestals. Public buildings frame the space with stone and shadow. It is a place where politics, reputation, and performance blend together so thoroughly that they can hardly be separated. A senator in a carefully arranged toga pauses to greet another man of rank. Their exchange is polite, measured, and full of things not quite said. Nearby, a clerk bends over wax tablets, recording some legal matter. A man with a complaint waits impatiently, shifting from foot to foot. A moneylender speaks quietly to a client. A fruit seller does brisk business just outside the main flow of officials and advocates. Because even in the center of public life, people still need something to eat. For an ordinary Romang, the forum might be a place to seek work, watch events, hear gossip, settle disputes, or simply pass through while attending to some errand. For the elite, it is a stage. To be seen in the right place, wearing the right clothing, speaking to the right people, matters a great deal, and clothing, here especially, becomes almost a language of its own. The toga, that great symbol of Roman citizenship and male respectability, is not comfortable. It is large, heavy, and awkward compared to a simple tunic. Draping it properly takes practice, and wearing it well is almost a performance. But that is partly the point. A toga is not meant for manual labor. It signals that the wearer belongs to a world of public life, law, politics, and status. It is clothing designed to be seen. Most Romans, of course, go about their lives in far simpler garments. Tunics, belts, cloaks if needed, sandals or shoes suited to the street. Clothing is practical first, though even practicality reflects class. A laborer's tunic may be stained and patched. A merchant's may be cleaner and better cut. A wealthy man's may be bright, soft, and carefully maintained. As the morning moves toward midday, the city becomes warmer and more crowded. The sounds of the forum, the market, and the side streets begin to merge into one immense urban rhythm. Hooves strike stone. Water splashes in fountains. Vendors call out prices. Children laugh and argue. A priest passes on his way to a temple. Somewhere a dog barks, and somewhere else a baby begins to cry. And above it all hangs the sense that Rome is not merely a city, but a machine of daily life so large that no single person can ever see all of it at once. While merchants sell in the market, scribes copy documents in shaded rooms. While schoolboys recite lessons, builders repair walls. While senators argue in the forum, women grind grain in kitchens and laundresses scrub cloth in courtyards. While one household plans a banquet, another wonders whether it can afford enough oil for the week. All of this is Rome, not one story, but thousands at once. Now the sun is climbing higher, and the city is edging toward the hottest part of the day. In the next part of our journey, we will leave the forum and follow the Romans into midday and early afternoon. We will visit the bathhouses, the kitchens, and the dining rooms. We will see how Romans relaxed, cleaned themselves, socialized, and escaped the heat. We will step inside richer homes and poorer ones, and we will discover what lunch, bathing, and rest might have looked like in the greatest city of the ancient world. For now, stay in the market a little longer. Listen to the murmur of bargaining. Listen to the shuffle of sandals on stone. Listen to the city breathing in the warm Roman sun, and let the morning of ancient Rome drift softly around you. A Day in the Life of an Ancient Roman Part 3, midday heat, bathhouses and the slower hours of Rome by now. The sun has climbed high above the rooftops of Rome. The long morning shadows have shrunk, retreating beneath carts, beneath market stalls, beneath the feet of hurried citizens crossing the city. The streets are brighter now, the stone underfoot warming steadily. And the great city that seemed energetic and restless in the morning has begun to shift into a different rhythm. Rome at midday does not fall silent. It simply changes its pace. The cool freshness of dawn is gone. The first easy bustle of the morning markets has softened into a heavier, warmer, slower movement. Shopkeepers wipe sweat from their brows. Merchants adjust awnings to create strips of shade over their goods. Dogs stretch out in narrow pockets of shadow beside walls. Even the donkeys seem less enthusiastic, their heads lowered as they pull carts through the bright Roman sun. If you stand still for a moment and simply listen, you can hear the city breathing differently now. The sharper sounds of morning, the opening of shutters, the quick hammering of work beginning. The first calls of street sellers have been replaced by a thicker, more constant hum. Voices are still everywhere, but they feel slower, more drawn out, a little drowsy under the heat. Sandals scrape against dusty stone. Water splashes steadily in public fountains. Somewhere nearby, someone laughs too loudly, perhaps already enjoying the cup of wine diluted against the midday warmth. The sky above is pale and bright, and in the narrow streets, the sunlight falls in hard angles between buildings, leaving one side of the road blazing and the other cool and dim. For many Romans, midday is not a time of grand activity. It is a time of pause, of adjustment, of small meals, short errands, washing, bathing, resting, or preparing for the later hours of the day. So let us slow down with them. We begin in one of the crowded neighborhoods where ordinary Romans live in apartment buildings stacked close together, their upper stories leaning over the street. Earlier in the day, these streets were full of urgency, people carrying bread home, children hurrying to lessons, workers making their way to workshops. But now the pace has softened. A woman stands in the doorway of a small cookshop, fanning heat away from her face with the edge of her hand. Inside, a pot bubbles gently over a fire. Lentils, onions, herbs, perhaps a little cabbage. Simple food. Filling food. The sort of meal that keeps people going when the day is only half done. At a nearby stall, a man buys a small portion of bread and cheese and eats it standing beneath a narrow awning. Another tears off pieces of flatbread and dips them into olive oil, pausing every few bites to watch the slow movement of the street. Lunch in ancient Rome is often modest, especially for ordinary people. The main meal for wealthier Romans usually comes later in the day. But midday still calls for something to quiet the stomach. A child sits on the curb beside his mother, swinging his legs while she unwraps a bit of bread and fruit from cloth. A laborer wipes dust from his face and leans against a wall in the shade, chewing slowly, saying nothing. Somewhere above, from an open upper window, someone shakes crumbs from a cloth into the street below. To the delight of a few hopeful birds, there is something gentle about this hour. Despite the heat, Rome is still crowded, still noisy, still a city of ambition and labor and constant motion. But midday creates a small pocket of slowness, as if the entire city has agreed, just for a little while, not to hurry quite so much. If we walk a little farther, we come to one of the most beloved institutions in Roman daily life, the bathhouses. The Roman baths are not merely places to wash. They are social spaces, exercise spaces, meeting places, places of routine and comfort and conversation. For many Romans, especially in cities, visiting the baths is woven into the rhythm of the day as naturally as buying bread or greeting a neighbor. From outside, the bathhouse may not look especially dramatic, depending on its size and neighborhood. But once we step through the entrance, the world changes. The first thing you notice is the temperature after the bright, dry heat of the streets. The air inside feels heavier, softer, touched by moisture and the warmth of heated rooms. There's the faint smell of oil, damp stone, and clean water, mixed with human voices echoing gently beneath high ceilings. Bathhouses vary greatly, of course. Some are modest neighborhood establishments. Others are enormous public complexes built on an astonishing scale, with grand halls, columns, gardens, exercise areas, pools, changing rooms, and carefully heated chambers. Rome is proud of its baths. They are one of the great symbols of Roman urban civilization. A city so rich in engineering and public works that large numbers of people can gather daily to bathe in heated water under vaulted ceilings. We enter slowly. The floor beneath our feet is smooth stone, pleasantly cool in one room and gently warm in another. Light filters through openings high above, falling in soft shafts through a little steam. Voices murmur. Sandals tap quietly on tile. Water laps against the edge of a pool. A man hands over a small fee at the entrance, then steps into the changing area. Another citizen, wealthier perhaps, has brought an enslaved attendant to carry his belongings and oil flask. Bathing in Rome is one of those daily habits that reveals both commonality and inequality at the same time. Many people come to the baths, but not everyone comes in the same way. Roman bathing is not quite like stepping under a modern shower. Instead, it follows a loose sequence of rooms and rituals. First, there may be exercise, stretching, lifting weights, tossing a ball, wrestling lightly in a courtyard or exercise yard. Then, once the body is warm, a bather may move through different rooms of increasing heat. There's the tepidarium, the warm room, a kind of gentle transition space. Then the caldarium, the hot room, where the air is steamy and the heat wraps around the skin like a blanket. Finally, perhaps the frigidarium, the cold room, where cool water refreshes the body after the heat. Let us imagine following one ordinary Roman through this sequence. He is not wealthy, but not destitute either. A tradesman, perhaps. His tunic is neatly mended, his sandals sturdy but worn. He has finished the most demanding part of his workday and has come here, as many do, to wash away dust and sweat, and to enjoy a little comfort before evening. He leaves his clothes in the changing room and steps into the warm chamber. The air is pleasant, almost sleepy. Stone benches line the walls. Other men sit and talk in low voices about prices in the market, rumors in the forum, the behavior of a difficult customer, the health of a relative, the prospects of the harvest, the possibility of rain. Rome is a city that talks. It talks in markets, in homes, in workshops, in taverns, and especially in baths. Gossip, politics, complaints, jokes, neighborhood news, everything flows as easily as water. Here in the warm room, men who might never meet in a senator's dining room can still exchange opinions. While steam curls upward into the light, our tradesman moves next into the hotter chamber. The caldarium is thick with warmth. The walls themselves seem to breathe heat. Roman engineers are astonishingly good at this sort of thing. Beneath the floors of many bathhouses runs a system called the hypocaust, a network of spaces through which hot air from furnaces can circulate, warming the rooms from below. It is one of those inventions that feels quietly magical when you imagine it in the ancient world. Stone floors heated from underneath, steam rising in elegant public baths, while outside the city roars on beneath the sun. The tradesman sits for a while, letting the heat sink into his muscles. Perhaps he closes his eyes for a moment. Perhaps he thinks of nothing at all. An attendant approaches carrying a small flask of olive oil. Instead of soap, Romans often use oil for cleaning. The oil is spread over the skin, and then a curved metal scraper called a strigil is used to scrape away oil, dirt, and sweat. It is practical, slightly strange to modern imagination, and entirely normal here. The metal glides across the skin with a soft scraping sound. Oil shines in the light. Somewhere nearby, water drips steadily from a basin. Voices rise and fall, never quite disappearing. Once clean and warm, our tradesman makes his way toward the cold room. The shock of cool water after the heat is immediate and refreshing. He inhales sharply as he lowers himself into the pool. Around him, other bathers do the same, some with stoic calm, others with exaggerated gasps and jokes at each other's expense. For a little while, the dust of the city is gone. No carts, no shouting market sellers, no smell of fish or smoke or crowded stairwells. Just water, stone warmth, and the odd piece of a public place designed for comfort. It is easy to understand why the baths matter so much, but not every Romang spends midday in marble. Rooms and heated pools. If we step back outside and return to the poorer neighborhoods, we find a very different afternoon unfolding. In a cramped upper room of an insula, the heat has become difficult. The family we imagined earlier, leather worker, wife, children, has pulled the shutters half closed to keep out the brightest sun. The room is dimmer now, the air still. A bowl of water sits near the wall. Bread has been cut into small portions so that everyone can eat. The mother sits near the window where there is at least a little movement of air, patching a garment, while keeping one eye on the younger child. The father has returned briefly from work for a bite of food and a short rest before the second half of the day. He sits heavily on a stool, shoulders slumped, eating bread, olives, and perhaps a little cheese in silence. Work in ancient Rome is tiring in ways that leave little room for romantic imagination. Carrying, cutting, lifting, hammering, sewing, grinding, hauling, these are the motions of countless lives. Outside, the street below is quieter than it was in the morning, but not empty. A water seller passes. A woman argues with a cloth merchant over price. Somewhere nearby, someone sings while working, not beautifully, but cheerfully enough. Across town, in a wealthy Roman house, midday looks rather different. The atrium is cool and shaded. The household slaves move with practiced quiet, preparing for the day's larger meal later on. In the kitchen, a cook checks pots, tastes sauces, and gives quick instructions to assistants. Bread is being sliced. Herbs are being crushed. Fish is being cleaned. Fruit is arranged carefully in bowls. Wine jars stand ready in the shade. The wealthy Roman household is a machine of invisible labor. A guest arriving later to recline at table may see only elegance, polished silver, painted walls, fresh flowers, platters of food, cups of wine. But beneath that elegance lies an entire hidden world of servants and enslaved people making everything possible. One scrubs the floor, another grinds spices, another carries water, another lays cushions in the dining room, another runs messages into the city, another tends a child, another waits silently in case the master needs a cloak, a cup, a note delivered. A lamp adjusted. It is important, when imagining Rome, not to let the marble distract us from the labor. For every wealthy citizen enjoying the shade of an atrium, someone else is sweating in a kitchen. For every elegant meal, there are hands chopping, carrying, washing, serving, and cleaning. For every leisurely visit to the baths, there are furnace workers feeding the fires that keep the rooms warm. The city rests on effort, still, even among the rich. Midday can bring a quieter mood. A Roman gentleman who has finished his morning obligations may retire for a while to a shaded room. He may read, dictate letters, speak with a friend, or simply rest. A woman of the household may oversee accounts, check on servants, or spend a little time with children in the cooler interior of the house. The air smells faintly of oil, fresh water, and garden plants from the courtyard. Beyond the walls, the city goes on. Inside, the day pauses, and then there are the streets again. No matter how many times we leave them, Rome always draws us back outside, because the streets are the city's bloodstream. Even at midday, when the heat presses down and the pace slows, the roads continue to carry the endless movement of Roman life. A mule cart creaks past loaded with amphorae. Two boys chase each other around a fountain until a nearby woman tells them sharply to stop. A priest in white passes with calm dignity, headed towards some temple duty. A barber stands in the shade of his shop doorway, trimming a customer's beard while the customer complains about politics. A small group of men gathers near a wine shop, debating the merits of a chariot team as if the matter were of enormous national importance. Somewhere not far away, perhaps in the Circus Maximus or in an amphitheater on another day, crowds may gather for races or games. Rome loves entertainment as much as it loves bread and baths. But on this particular afternoon, we are not following emperors or spectacles. We are following the ordinary hours between morning labor and evening meal. And ordinary hours have their own quiet fascination. Imagine the sounds: the distant splash of a fountain, the lazy flap of cloth awnings in a warm breeze, the scrape of a chair across stone, a cellar calling out watered wine, a child reciting a lesson from memory even after school has ended, because tomorrow the teacher will ask for it again, the faint ringing of metal from a workshop that has not yet closed for the day, pigeons shifting on a roof tile overhead. These are not dramatic sounds. They are the sounds of people living, and that is what makes them so restful. By the later afternoon, the light begins to soften just a little. Not yet evening, not yet cool, but no longer as harsh as it was at midday. Bathers leave the public baths clean and relaxed, their hair damp, their skin carrying the faint scent of oil. Merchants begin to think about what has sold and what must be taken home. Children grow hungry again. Servants in wealthier homes quicken their preparations for dinner. In poorer households, the next meal is considered more simply what remains. What can be bought cheaply? What can be stretched? The city is slowly turning toward evening. And in the next part of our journey, we will follow it there. We will watch lamps being lit and meals being served. We will enter Roman dining rooms and modest apartments as families gather at the end of the day. We will listen to the quieter sounds of evening streets, the fading business of shops, and the slow settling of darkness over the eternal city. We will see what Romans ate, how they rested, how the rich entertained, and how ordinary people prepared for another night in crowded rooms beneath the Roman sky. But for now, remain here in the soft heat of the afternoon. Sit beside the bathhouse pool for a moment longer. Listen to the quiet murmur of voices through the steam. Feel the warmth in the stone walls and the cool splash of water. Then step back into the Roman street, where the sun hangs high, the awnings ripple lazily, and the whole great city seems to breathe in slow, tired rhythm, and let ancient Rome carry you gently onward into the afternoon.